just quickly, I just want to give a disclaimer. I am starting a new series tonight, The God You Think You Know, and it's going to challenge us. But tonight's one, I'm not claiming to be an apologist. Okay? Because there's going to be a little bit of apologetic coming out, but I'm not an apologist. I'm just telling you up front, so I'm going to have to probably read my notes just tonight, so just get with me. Is that okay? So I want to start with one of my favorite Psalms. I have 150 favorite Psalms, but I just want to read one of them, which you guys at the back don't know about, but it's Psalm 62. Truly, my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from Him. Truly, He is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. How long will you assault me? Would all of you throw me down? This leaning wall, this tottering fence. Surely they intend to topple me from my lofty place. They take delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. Yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from Him. Truly, He is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in Him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to Him, for God is our refuge. Surely the low-born are but a breath, the high-born are but a lie. If weighed on a balance, they're nothing. Together, they're only a breath. Do not trust in extortion or put vain hope in stolen goods. Though your riches increase, do not set your heart on them. One thing God has spoken, two things I've heard. Power belongs to you, God, and with you, Lord, is unfailing love. And you reward everyone according to what they've done. How do you think David felt when he wrote that song? What do you think was the confidence in this man's heart? Because he knew who God was. He had confidence in God. Now, I want to tell you tonight, it's very difficult to have confidence in someone you're not sure about. Or someone you don't believe. Or someone you have doubts for. But when you know Him, and you're confident in Him, it's so much easier to live life. Now, I want to address, I did for a number of weeks, touch on the subject of me, myself, and I, going deeper into who we are in ourselves. Then we begin to find our identity in what God says about us. What I want to tackle now is, where does our confidence come from? Our confidence comes from what God says about Himself. And that's where we're going to park this thing. I'm starting this series, The God You Think You Know, on the premise that everyone listening or watching presumes upon the actual existence of God. And I'm particularly doing this because we need to know the character and the nature of the God we love, we serve, and we follow. So many people think they know God, then come to the craziest conclusions as to what He's like. When the reality is, we cannot believe without a firm foundation of faith. And I also want to say that a firm foundation of faith comes from what you know about God, what you believe to be true about God. Most of us draw our conclusions about God based on what either He has or hasn't done for us when we feel we really needed Him to be there. That's why when Jesus taught His disciples to pray in Luke 11, He put the emphasis on God our Father in heaven, hallowed be Thy name. Why the focus has to be on Him. The importance, the priority has to be way above ourselves. Thankfully, in the Bible, we do have the self-revelation of God. I'll say that again because everyone's mind went. Thankfully, we have in the Bible the self-revelation of God. We just need the discipline to study and to meditate on this in order to learn how to trust in and love God more completely. Okay? God reveals himself. He speaks to us. And what I'm trying to say is we have to learn about God from what he says, and then we have to change our thinking based on what God says about himself. Most people I know, Christian and non-Christian, have a set view of God that they move this way. And not only do they move this way, but they talk this way. Very few of us have based our knowledge of God on his self-revelation and allowed him to change the way we think. Because that changes the way we believe and therefore the way we act. But I do have to tonight make a quick mention of a rather obvious factor. Some people can't get over the hurdle of unbelief. I'm really hoping that you will become more and more confident to bring visitors to church. Just this year, I can see the people who are coming to church that I brought. Just through my witness, just telling them to come along. Because I know that when they come into this place, the presence of God will touch them, even if they don't believe in him. I don't have to believe in the power of happy gas to go to the dentist. Breathe it in and start acting different. I remember a man in this church who had a condition, and so he went in for an operation. I went to visit him in ICU. And before I got to him, he'd had a reaction to the morphine. And I knew who he was because I knew his voice. And I remember walking into ICU and hearing from bed 8 a man belting out these words, "Goodness gracious, great balls of fire." He was under the influence of something that nobody could see. But it was there. In other words, some people, when you want to speak to them, don't even have a starting point for faith because they don't or can't believe he exists. Do you understand? We live in an age of relativism where people are being told that God, theology, religious belief is an option among many. But within that, there is not clear thinking processes going on. We often hear strong arguments against the existence of God. Like, if God exists, explain to me how innocent people are killed in accidents. If God exists, why doesn't he answer all our prayers? If God exists, how come we can't agree on what he's like? Who's right? If God exists, why are children born hungry? Why do decent people remain poor? Why do bad things happen to good people? If God exists, it seems he can't control the weather or the elements. So then how can he be a God we trust in? The only time atheists believe in God is when something goes wrong, and then they call it an act of God. If God really exists, then why do fewer people believe in him now than ever before? If God exists, why does it take him so long to convince us that he even lives? If God exists, why doesn't he just reveal himself once and for all and remove the doubt? Well, what does the Bible say will happen if he does just that? It's called judgment. In fact, if God exists, why doesn't he just strike dead everybody who doesn't believe in him, argues against him, and blasphemes him all the time? So in defense of these, some common arguments have been raised just to help us think a little bit for people who don't want to believe in God. So I can't start talking about the nature or the self-revelation of God until we deal with the fact of does he even exist. Now, whereas I can't convince somebody in pure argument that God exists because of the rain of doubt falling, but I can give them a roof under which to stand to think, hang on, let me consider the possibility that there may be something out there beyond what I see with my eyes. So there are 3 major arguments, or let's say 4, that have been raised around the discussion of does God exist. And the first one is what they call the cosmological argument. The first argument looks at the cosmos and asks who put everything there. Cosmological comes from two Greek words, cosmos and logos. Cosmos meaning the world, logos in this case means reason. So you put them together, you get the reason for the world. The cosmological argument asks, what is the reason for the world? Now there are a number of variations on this. We're just going to tackle two. The first one is the principle of sufficient reasons. Okay? The principle of sufficient reasons. We begin with the undeniable assumption that something exists. I mean, touch your arm. No matter what you feel about it, you can't deny it exists. It's there, just like the weather. The cosmological question asks, why do things exist? Why is anything here? Suppose for a moment nothing existed. Would nothingness then require an explanation? No. Because if nothing's there, there's no explanation required. But the split second something exists. In that millisecond, we're forced to answer the question, why? Why does it exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? So that's what they call the principle of sufficient reason. The second principle, trying to answer the cosmological question, is the principle of contingency. Contingency means chance. This relates to the need of everything for something else. Almost everything is dependent on something other than itself for its existence. Almost anything. Trees need air to exist. Grass needs water. The stormers need winds. We all need something in order to exist. Nothing is utterly independent or self-reliant. Even prevailing views of cosmology confirms this. The Big Bang Theory, for instance, says that the universe at one time did not exist. And it probably won't exist forever. That's what the Big Bang Theory people say. The second law of thermodynamics teaches that everything in our universe is in a gradual state of entropy, slowly disintegrating, gradually losing energy and complexity. If you don't believe it, look at your driver's license when you were 16. Look at the picture of your driver's license now. Second law of thermodynamics. Everything is in a state of entropy. It is gradually losing energy complexity and is slowly disintegrating. So these two rationales, that everything existent is dependent on something else, and that actually all that stuff is busy fading, leads us to the third rationale. If all that exists is up to chance, then who or what is the explanation for why these chance things even exist? In other words, if everything is relying on something else, then what's the basis that supports the whole? In other words, if there was a Big Bang, who pulled the trigger? That's the question being asked. Look at everything, just for a moment, look at everything that exists. Imagine from the smallest micron to the largest galaxies, the stars, the planets. Think of everything in existence that you can think of and draw a circle around it in your mind and have everything on the inside. Everything that you can possibly imagine, from the smallest little atom to the complexity of galaxies. Everything we know that's created. Put it in a circle. Now you have everything that exists within the universe in that circle. Everything inside that circle is dependent on something else for its existence. And everything within that circle is slowly winding its way down. Right? Even our sun. They say it's going to fade. It's going to go out in about 1 trillion years, but it's going to go out. This is a statement of irrefutable fact. Now, the only question that really matters is this: what caused all this chance stuff to exist in the first place? And if it exists, what's making it all wind down? Now, the answer to this question logically can only be found in two places. Number one, the ultimate cause of everything can only be found either inside the circle or outside of it. There's no other option. It's either inside or outside. So which one makes the best sense? It's not inside the circle, because we know that within the circle, everything there is up to chance, or what they call contingent. It's not self-reliant. So it couldn't have caused everything else. So we have to conclude that the explanation for all that exists inside the circle must lie outside of it. And if something is outside the circle, by definition, it must be not contingent. In other words, not up to chance. It must be uncaused. It must be self-reliant. And it must be completely independent. To use other language, that which is on the outside of the circle would have to be eternal, unlimited, and all-powerful. And those adjectives come dangerously close to the classical definition of God, doesn't it? So something out there, non-reliant on something else for its existence, can be the only thing that created everything we do see. That's called the cosmological answer, the reason for the world. Why is everything here? And who is behind it all? And we all ask that question, why? Second big question that has to be asked in terms of the possible existence of God is what they call the teleological argument. In other words, why, based on the fact that everything does exist, why is it so ordered and so complex? Why is life so ordered and so complex? If you get a dice and you roll it and you get a 1, then you roll again, you get a 2. You roll again, you get a 3. You're thinking, hey, my luck's on. You get a 4. You get a 5, you get a 6. You throw again, you get a 1. You get a 2, you get a 3, you get a 4, you get a 5, you get a 6. You get a 1, you get a 2. Sooner or later, you're going to think, this isn't up to chance. Either someone's playing games with me or someone's behind this. Common sense would tell people that. And for centuries, people looked at the complexities and the wonders of this universe and simply assumed that there's a master designer behind everything. This traditional thinking was basically unchallenged until late in the 18th century, called the Age of Reason. And in the Age of Reason, when people were supposedly getting more clever, scientists began suggesting that the origins of life could be explained by chance processes over long periods of time. In other words, it's like saying this: there's a steel factory, and the steel factory explodes. And when the fire dies down, a car came out. A perfectly good one. The BMW 7 Series. What do you think are the mathematical probabilities of a chance collision of floating gases eventually producing a single living microorganism? Let alone a process as complex as photosynthesis or an action as amazing as simply an eagle in flight. Remember, the teleological argument basically says that random chance explanation for the complexity and design and order of this world is highly unlikely. It's very unlikely that by chance we have what we see around us. The philosopher William Paley wrote this: there simply cannot be a design without a designer. There cannot be a contrivance without a contriver. And there cannot be order without choice. Even Charles Darwin, the father of evolutionary theory, understood this. In his book, The Origin of Species, Charles Darwin admits this. To suppose that the eye, with so many parts there, all working together, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd. He wrote that in Origin of Species. I agree, it doesn't make sense. For those of you interested in numbers, scientists have calculated the probability of the chance creation of a single protein molecule. Do you know what it is? Not for organized life, for one simple, basic protein molecule to be formed all by itself. The chances are 1 in 10 to the power of 243 number of years. That's the number 10 with 243 zeros behind it. It would take billions and trillions of years for one single protein molecule to arrive, never mind any kind of life. Now look around you. Look at the sheer physiological wonder of the person sitting next to you. Just look. Even the one next to you right now that looks like a total Neanderthal. Just for a moment, gaze upon their eyes, their ears, their noses, their skin, their sense of touch and smell. For the guys, your emotional capacity. For the girls, your incredible mental ability. I want to tell you, it takes a lot more faith to believe that you are the result of a gaseous explosion than it is to believe we were custom made and designed by God. Can you imagine a mother giving birth and they hold that baby in its arms and she says, "What a beautiful collection of gases." Note, I did not say the production of gases. When we left church today, I gave some other little boy and another little girl a lift home with my kids. And they punctuated every statement with a burp. Till I stopped the car and said, "I'm going to take you home right now if you do this once more." You know, you can no more expect a baby to be an accident of nature as you can expect a fabric store to blow up and a pair of designer jeans pop out the other end. But that's what they're asking for. So the teleological argument says, no, hang on a second. Not only based on the cosmological argument, must there be a creator for there to be life, some kind of intelligent design, but the second question that needs to be asked in arguments of a God is, why is everything so absolutely ordered way beyond chance? The third argument of four, is the who says argument. The argument of moral authority. How is it, for instance, that human beings everywhere worldwide recognize a common moral code? Think about it. In every country in the world, little kids are smacked for being naughty. Every country in the world. You do not, for those of you who are parents, agree together that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're going to teach your kids to be good. And Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, you're going to teach them to misbehave. And Sunday's a day off. You're not going to do that because they need to be corrected from the moment they're born. They know what's wrong and right. And they constantly break that line. If we human beings simply evolved from primeval gases, if we are actually merely grown-up germs, now don't think about your neighbor, your mother-in-law, just think about a common argument. Or if we are recent improvements on bipedal hominids, you know those? How do we account for the fact that in almost every culture on planet Earth, people value telling the truth over deceitfulness? People value kindness over violence. People value preserving life over taking life, and loyalty over backstabbing. How come? Are gases, germs, or your gene pool capable on their own to somehow create a remarkably consistent code of values and then go and implant it in the hearts and minds of billions of individual people? What's the chances? It's as someone once observed, and I'm not necessarily making the statement, but someone did say, it's interesting how many atheists are members of charitable and humanitarian causes. Now, for an atheist to be a member of a humanitarian cause is absolutely inconsistent because they believe we're all an accident. We're not here by intelligent design. We're here by accident. So if we're here by accident, then why must I care about what happens to other people accidentally? What gives? What value do these people have? Because they're all just a result of cosmic farts. So why should I give an interest? Or why should I even care? So an atheist is saying at the same time, we are not created beings made in the image of God, but we do have a moral law stamped on our hearts. I say, hang on. It's one or the other. That's why you leave a number of atheists in charge of a country's legal system. Where does it go? Only 50 or 60 years ago, if you're attracted to people of the same sex, not only were you imprisoned, but they did inhumane treatments to rectify the problem. Didn't they? In fact, Nazi Germany took all such people to the gas chamber. Fast forward to 2018, it is one of the rights entrenched in our Constitution. In fact, if somebody has a same-sex relationship, you are no longer allowed by any means. Welcome to church, you two. They're in my home group. I can do that. I'll start again just for you. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. No, who said that? Philip. Shan, I'm feeling loved. The point I simply want to make is we have become far more accepting of what was once unacceptable, right? For good or for bad, that's what we've done. Let me ask you this question, because there are rights groups in the world right now campaigning big time for the legalization of pedophilia. Right? Because if there are no absolute standards and we are not made in the image of God, who are you to infringe on my personal rights? And who are you to say that this is acceptable? Now remember, modern values, democracy says we all have a say. So then you put in power those who are allowed to have a say over you, who hold to a relativistic moralism rather than an absolute moralism. Then you give them the authority to make decisions, and we in South Africa today have the world's most liberal constitution. Now, go and find any 12 to 15-year-old in any school in South Africa who can tell you the meaning behind Jonah and the whale, behind Noah and the flood. There is no such understanding. So they've so fallen away from the biblical moral compass. But yet get any child on planet Earth and they know wrong from right. Their consciences kick in. You literally have to be taught by so-called superiors there's no God, because left to your own, you will always believe there's a divine being. Why? Because it's put inside you. Atheists are trying to appeal to some code of morality to stop the savage extermination of whales and dolphins and little rabbits, and trying to get us to awaken ourselves to the plight of homeless people. If we're all an accident, then isn't a homeless person simply an unfortunate bump on the evolutionary scale? Then why must I care? But you do care. And even an atheist has to admit something stirs up in a sense of right and wrong. Who put it there? Last argument, number 4. The he lives argument. The religious experience argument. All trying to find reasons why you can argue with an atheist for the existence of God if you want to start getting into a place where they understand the self-revelation of God. Firstly, you can't argue everything exists, so how did it get there? Second one is not only is it there, but it's so ordered. Not only is it so ordered, but everybody in it has a moral standard. Where did it come from? And number 4, the religious experience argument. This is based on the notion that literally millions of trustworthy people claim to have felt the presence of God. Millions of them. They also claim to have sensed his direction for their lives. They also claim to have experienced his strength and anointing, giving them purpose for their future. Now, I want to tell you, it's very possible that a deluded or deceitful person can manufacture the claim to some kind of religious experience. All cults start like that. But we're not talking about a handful of people or even a few hundred people. We're talking about thousands of years of history in which some of the best and finest thinkers of planet Earth have witnessed having had a real experience with God. This includes political leaders, chief justices, scientists, sociologists, economists, etc., etc. They all testify to feeling loved by God. And they claim to have received forgiveness from him. They all testify he's real. They all claim to have met him in one way or another. Literally millions of people across different cultures and different sociological strata are saying the same thing. He's real and they've met him. How do we account for all these Christians? The question is this: are there literally millions of Christians worldwide hallucinating at the same time about the same thing and coming to the same conclusions? Because the majority of people on planet Earth admit to a God. Well, we're not exactly expecting everyone to believe in the existence of God just because we do. We do have to say, what is the explanation outside of the universe for why everything exists? Why does it seem there's a designer behind this intricately designed world? Is there an author behind this incredible moral code that all of us subscribe to? And this answer is more important and more urgent than people think. Because someday we will all stand accountable for what we did with the evidences for the existence of God. Now, what I've done tonight is try and give us something to try and understand an argument you can give someone. You can't go to someone these days who doesn't know Jesus and just pull out a Bible and say, I just want to show you what it says here. Because he's like, sorry? That book has authority in your life, not in mine. So what's all this now? So you go to, and you start off, you say, you exist, you're right here. Yes, why? You pull out a gun. Don't shoot me. Well, why? Why not? What value do you have? Besides the fact of, don't shoot me because it may hurt. Why are you here? Not only why are you here, but why are you so ordered and complex? Not only that, but not only why are you here, not only why are you ordered and complex, but why do you have a sense of right and wrong? Why, if someone cheats you, you say that's wrong? And fourthly, why when you're in trouble do you pray? See, help them understand that there are actual natural arguments for the existence of God. Now, you and I know that the Bible teaches us that actually God doesn't have to be sought. God's looking for us. God is actually seeking us out. And you know that when you do start with humility to testify about Jesus, about what he's done in your life, it's incredible how their lives start to open. Because the Spirit, I said this morning, the Holy Spirit starts to write on their hearts as Jesus gets hold of them. And when you understand, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, as you begin to understand God's self-revelation, who he says he is, you can communicate that God is not the God of people's nightmares. He is not the God of overzealous, screaming fundamentalists. He is not the God waiting for you to fail so he can slap you mercilessly. On the contrary, he is the God who wants to be in an intimate relationship with every human being. He is the God who has orchestrated every event of your life to give you the best chance to know him, so that you can experience the full measure of his love. Everyone in this room can think back to your youngest years and realize now how God held you in the palm of his hand, and how he has been revealing himself to you since you were this high. He is the God who cares about you far more than you know or realize, because he made you in a way to be able to converse with you. You just need to understand, friends, that when you want to believe in the God of the universe and you want to share with people your faith in the God of the universe, you need to understand these days many of them don't even know if he exists. And it's good just to have a basic argument from which to have a discussion. By arguments, I don't mean a fight. I mean to present your case. To be able to just speak to somebody. And there are many good expositors out there. There are many good apologists out there, who are able to give you things to think about, to explain to people why. The reason for God, if you like. And we'll move next week into the first stage of God's self-revelation. What does he say about himself? But you just got to help people jump over the hurdle of unbelief to understand that he is there. That this whole world, and we know from Romans that this universe, the created world, shouts to his existence. We know that. And so we can use that argument, and that's what it does. The cosmological, the theological argument points back to creation, points back to nature, and says, there's the proof. Then you go morally, and you start to deal with them about why do you have a sense of right and wrong? And why, when you're in trouble, do you trust God's out there? Because God's looking for you. Because God created you in his image. Because God loves you. Because God knows how to talk to you. God's entire plan of eternal salvation was that you would walk with him in an ongoing relationship. And dying is simply being translated into a better relationship with him. Stand with me, please.